The last point that I want to make is that and it really just goes from what he was saying in summarizing his final chapter. It is, I think, an extraordinarily useful and wise book. The lessons have been drawn from Vietnam, started being drawn while the war was still going on. They are very powerful. They affected our thinking about the Gulf War. They affect our thinking about Bosnia. There are many different kinds of lessons. They're drawn from many different perspectives. Someone once did a list of 29 different lessons of Vietnam that had been drawn out widely in the public. But most of the lessons that are drawn, like the lesson that we should not intervene in what you can characterize as civil conflicts elsewhere, or the lesson that if we intervene militarily somewhere, we must do so in great force and very quickly. These are prescriptions that may be right or they may be wrong. They really vary. Wisdom depends on the circumstances in which they're applied. But the lessons that he draws in this book are lessons of broad application. They are not this kind of specific prescription. They are lessons about how to think about problems. And I would boil down his 11 precepts into two broad categories. The first is the precept that when we are thinking about any foreign area, any other government or organized force in the world that has a different history and a different culture, you need to think about that history and culture and not to project your own values and your assumptions about that they will behave the way you do. You have to think about them in their own context. That is a lesson of universal application. And the second is the general lesson that when we think about doing something in the world, we should always very closely inspect the premises that we're operating on. Look at them very carefully. And he makes the point that these premises were accepted, that they were not analyzed, and I think that proposition is one of universal validity. It's not brand new. Oliver Cromwell once caught it by saying, "I beseech you in the bowels of Christ to consider that you may be wrong." And that's another phrasing of it, but it's a tremendously. And there is, finally, there is an implicit lesson in the book, not one of the 11 that he gives, I think, which is, I think, a terribly important lesson because it runs against the conventional wisdom that is taught in this university and around the world about international relations. Because as I read it, he is saying that what his painful voyage with regard to the Vietnam War was a voyage of discovery about the relationship between government and the people in the United States, and the implicit lesson is that the conduct of foreign policy is not primarily the conduct of relations with other government. It is primarily a matter of domestic leadership. And that seems to me a tremendously important lesson that this book conveys, and I hope will convey to generations of readers to come. Thanks.